joining us. Once again, my name is Nicole Varner. I serve as the Executive Director of the CBC PAC. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us this morning for our Content with Conviction panel. First, I'd like to say it is so important for you to be here as our content creators who we work with all of the time, because you are our conduit to America writ large. We would not be able to talk about the wonderful things that our members of the CBC and the Democratic Caucus are doing without your input and without your output. So I think it's so important for us to also create space for you guys to talk about what's going on in your ecosystem and how you can learn from one another and how we can learn from you in order to better reach not only our constituents, but the constituents of all of our members, of which there are 62 across the country in so many different communities. And I think it's a really special opportunity to be able to lead an organization like this that invests in Black talent and Black creatives, especially in a moment like this when we are being attacked and being dismantled brick by brick. So I'd just like to thank you for your time and your talents and your gifts that you allow us to use every day. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Cara Johnston, our digital diva, our doer of all the things, our double duty diva, who has pulled this phenomenal weekend together and allowed us to have this time to be in community with you. So I'll let her take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We know that you all could be anywhere else. It's a very busy weekend, so we appreciate you being here. Nicole was spot on. She hit the nail on the head. I always say, content creation, influencer culture is not going away. When we kind of try to buck against it, we are working and hustling backwards. We need to move forward, and I appreciate all of you for lending us your voices for not only political social media, but social issues and social impact. I think it's so important to be able to speak to current events that are, directly affecting our lives. Also, as Black people, we know we don't have identity without politics. So America made sure of that. And so to separate our content from our identity as Black folks is typically difficult. So what we're trying to convey with Content with Conviction is keeping you brand safe, being able to still maximize that branding while also adding in a little bit of that social impact, a little bit of that current political events and current political climate that you might care about without turning off your normal audience. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our hosts for this workshop. And I want us to get started. So remember, have an open mind. If you have any questions, please save them till the end. And I will get started with introducing our lovely hosts. And so I'm going to introduce George Conscious Lee. George is an orator, educator, and content creator whose work sits at the intersection of media, socio-political issues, and popular culture. With an engaged audience of over 5 million across TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and X, known for being purposely provocative to educate around pertinent topics. He is an NAACP Image Award nominee and a recipient of YouTube's Content Creator Choice Award, and his commentary has been featured in Rolling Stone, Forbes, Essence, The Washington Post, The Atlantic, and The New York Times. So everybody give it up for George. George's co-host is the beautiful Tashara Parker, and yeah. Tashara is a 5-time Emmy award-winning journalist, speaker, and media entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in Texas broadcast news. A Texas A&M alumna, she works at NBC and CBS affiliated stations across the state before joining an ABC affiliate in Dallas, where she was named Best News Anchor by D Magazine in 2022. She is the creator of Rooted, her Emmy-winning series that sparked a statewide and national dialogue about natural hair representation and workplace equality, work that earned her the National Crown Coalition Award for Power and contributed to advocacy efforts around the Crown Act. A member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and a partner with the Dallas Mavericks on community storytelling, Tashara is deeply embedded in the fabric of Dallas-Fort Worth. Today, she leads Loud Women Lead, LWL Media, a Dallas-based storytelling agency and consultancy helping underrepresented voices build influence, own their narratives, and show up powerfully in every room. Tashara is a TEDx speaker, Black Enterprise 40 Under 40 honoree, and one of the most dynamic voices in Texas media on any stage and in any room. So you see why we have these hosts. Please give it up for our hosts. Thank you. You all can go ahead and get started.
Girl, rule number one, make sure the mic is on. Good morning, y'all. Go ahead. Don't start acting
Make
a
sure it was
fool.
on. I was inspired last night by Kalani, so I wanted to make sure the mic was on the way she
Kalani
made
did
sure
her
the mic
big
was
one.
on. Hope y'all enjoyed the show last night, you know?
Okay, so real quick, one of the things that we were talking about earlier as we were kind of preparing for this presentation is we were saying that we wanted to make sure that we could answer questions from the audience, right? So as we get into the presentation, if there's any point, I know Car mentioned like you can save some of the questions for the end, but if there's any question you want to ask us throughout, please ask us, and many of you already know the type of things that we cover and talk about, but I think it's important that we have the conversation, especially around content with conviction and the impact and art of storytelling. So you want to kick us off?
Yeah. The two key questions that we're going to be using to guide this conversation today is how can creators communicate ideas that improve communities without becoming political commentators? This is appropriately called doing it with conviction. And want to just make sure we understand that you can make a statement with conviction without being political. The second question is how do you stay brand safe without playing it in a state's matter, without playing it too safe? I think that we can have a conversation about how a lot of things are inherently political, as well as being able to talk about how there is a risk to lose something when you start to become, quote unquote, capital P political. And I hope that this conversation, for people that's thinking about getting storytelling in there, is that we're able to give some type of information so you feel more comfortable and confident.
Yeah, and I always say too, when you're thinking about being brand safe, if you are that worried about a certain brand not picking up your content or not wanting to work with you because of your content, hey, that probably ain't the brand you need to be working with anyway. So just keep that top of mind really in all that we are gonna discuss as we're having this conversation. We got a few learning objectives for you as well.
Yeah. Y'all know I love to teach. So, I put this together in a way that I'm thinking about in the classroom. So the learning objectives we have for today is learning how stories influence beliefs and behaviors. We're going to understand internal links and link arguments. I come from a policy debate background, and I think using the portable skills that I learned from debate and how they apply for us to think about politics or making a story, I think it could be a great tool for us to lean on. And then we're going to be using storytelling to connect everyday content with the larger social outcomes. I think that's what a lot of us are good at anyway.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks, again, in this room already are good at creating impact without sacrificing authenticity. You guys already know. And I feel like authenticity, like real talk, has become a buzzword these days, but leaning into who you are. And authenticity going to look different for me than it might look for Zach or that it might look for George. So just keeping that in mind. And of course, I have a journalism background, which sometimes, folks will start frowning upon that. But I think that there's room for us to coexist. And there's a lot of work that journalists as well as creators can do collectively together. So applying those journalistic standards, accuracy, sourcing, editorial discipline, what that looks like to build content people trust and move into action, because that's what this is all about.
I think everybody on social media are storytellers. I think that all storytellers are not created equal. I hope that this presentation bring in some of the attributes that make these stories that's good the better ones, and the stories that lack some of the context or lack some of the teeth that we're able to get into. But for research purposes, why stories matter more than information is something that I've always heard. I'm sure we've all heard this, but a lot of times people don't remember what you say to them, but they remember how you make them feel. I think that all of us as content creators and all of us that's thinking about content creating think about the everlasting feelings or the everlasting effect that we have on people based off of how we radiate a feeling towards them. I meet a lot of people all the time, and I say a lot of things on the internet. Most of the people don't repeat what I say to them on the internet, but they do mean, hey, you made this thing that made me feel X. And as an educator and debater, that spillover is what I'm looking for. That spillover is what I know I can build on and making sure I can build quote unquote consciousness, unintended, and making sure the stories actually have some type of, teeth with it. This mic is going crazy too. But characteristics, stories, characters, emotions, experiences, these are things we start talking about. Storytelling. I think that
I think
Peter
they might be.
Thiel,
Are they trying to tell you to be quiet? Is that what's going on? Do we need to use this other mic?
I blame white supremacy. Me personally, I blame white supremacy. I think anytime things start going bad, you can think of the structural ways that white supremacy experience, especially in the voice.
Yeah. You done?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good now.
I love that he has an education background, by the way, because having me up here with you and also talking about having characters and stories. And sometimes when you say characters, people be like, a character? Why your story need a character? Yes, your story needs a character, okay? Because characters are who people can relate to. So we can talk about the facts all day, all night. That don't matter when you ain't got nobody to talk about when it comes to a story. In TV news, one of the things they used to always remind us is they would tell us to name whoever their character was. So whether the character was named Larry or Ashley, right? We was telling the story for Larry or Ashley. You're not telling the story just for an audience. You are naming that person who the story is for. So I love that you mentioned that those stories need to have that information. One of the things that I always lead with is making sure that you're building trust with your audience, which many of you I know have already done. As you already mentioned, a story can move people, but a true story is the one that can be trusted. So when it comes to telling stories, a few things I should say that I want folks to keep in mind is the truth, right? Everybody has their own truth. But when you are telling facts, can't nobody argue with your facts, all right? What actually happened in the story? You know how it goes. Verification, can it be confirmed beyond one voice or one version? Oftentimes, especially in the social media world, everybody want to be the first person to go ahead and get the story or the topic or the idea or get their feedback on it. And one of the things that I love about Sonia is she'll take her time to respond to anything and make it exactly what she wants it to be before it goes out there. So I always think when it comes to a story, making sure you have your sources to back that thing up. I probably shouldn't have said that. I know what I'm thinking. Damn, I'm thinking we still at the concert from last night. Hold on now. Sourcing, okay, who are you getting that information from? Who is providing the information? Of course, again, as I mentioned already, having trust with your audience. Have you earned the trust of your audience? But more importantly, have you kept the trust of your audience? So if you said something on your page or posted something that you later found out was not the truth, as we run into quite often with some storytellers and creatives and influencers sometimes. Hello, somebody. You gotta make sure that you go back and tell the folks what's the actual true information, right? And you keep it up there too if it needs to be, and you take it down if it doesn't, especially if it's inaccurate information. So I always wanna lead with that, gaining the trust of your audience, but also keeping that trust alive.
And this part right here is understanding there are levels to how we tell stories. And telling a story needs story development. This brother right here, Premium, you know I was coming to you, brother. If you haven't seen his content, I think that there is ways that people can have a skill and an art for being able to develop a story, be able to create a hook, be able to have a rise and climax, be able to have, I'm talking about read like a writer. And him specifically, when it comes to doing, I feel like social impact, when I watch his content, I feel very smooth. I can go to a barbershop or go to a cookout and I can show one of the homies his video and we can have us a political conversation based off of what he did and said, and it's very accessible. Well, what a lot of people identify with me a lot of times is that they look at me as like their cousin, their uncle, their blah, 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 because of how relatable I am. And I think that that's important in how we tell stories. I'm going to say this part. I'll say this part right here. No, I'm trying to decide. Do I want to be extra when I say this or be straightforward? I'll be straightforward when I say this part right here. But not every message has to be political in order for you to get to the issue or get to like the point of it. Some of the first things I started talking about on the internet that got me some traction was talking about the environment, actually. Talking about the environment, talking about being a rural Texan, talking about CO2 emissions and climate change, and even the reddest of the rednecks was able to identify because they family farmland was being messed up, or the way that it wasn't seen as being political, but to her point, it was presenting the facts. Once I was able to present the facts, I started getting into understanding what issues impact these facts. The reason why I like intersectionality is because it forces me to think about the other issues that's intersected with it. So most time, I feel like, especially coming from Texas, we're taught that white people are the ones that are tree huggers, and they the only ones that care about the environment. If you care about the environment, it's some white shit, quote unquote, right? For me, being able to go back and reclaim the story of, no, black person, the way that this environment meets under your feet is gonna impact how you feed yourself, impact how you navigate, impact all the various ways that we care about because the land matters. This allowed for me to build, I think, trust with a lot of different people throughout Texas. Because I got some Trumpsters that be in my comment section. You feel me? For better or for worse. I have some of those, moderates that be in my comment section for better or for worse. And what I understand is they like the facts and the way I tell stories, even when they disagree. So for this slide right here, I think I just want to give y'all different impacts or different contexts for you to kind of put your story in. It can be in mental health and wellness, it can be financial literacy, it can be parenting. All these topics matter to human beings regardless of where on the spectrum you are. And I think being intentional about how you tell a story about these particular things can help you build an audience. The last thing I say on this one is, if you can be genuine and know like what's your ministry. Because some of us in social media, we don't know our ministry and we get outside of our lanes and we start talking very confidently and very wrong, loud, proud, and wrong on stuff, and it make the work that we doing in this room, make it hard for us. What we know is that we're seen in our culture as the people that's gonna bring the facts. When we have misinformation on the internet, it makes it more hard work for us because now we have to put off emotional labor, intellectual labor to dispelling the misinformation, disinformation. Being real is just lies. We've come up with a lot of different ways to be like, you lying. But I think that sometimes we need to bring that information back. Misinformation, disinformation, no, you're lying. And we're gonna make this
But
very
also
accessible.
calling it out that way.
Oh, definitely
Yeah.
call it out,
Yeah. I love that you mentioned, obviously, everything doesn't have to be political content. And one of my, I guess, quote unquote, I don't know, hell, claims to fame, whatever, it's talking about like social issues online that people care about. So I'll never forget being on TV news, on morning TV news, wearing my natural hair on TV, and I wore a hairstyle on TV, and all hell, what'd you say?
It looks nice.
Okay, well, you know what? We do what we need to do, all right? Wore a hairstyle on TV, and boy, you would have thought I done cussed the people out, okay? I wore my hair, and all of a sudden, all these folks were writing in saying, how could she wear the hairstyle? She ghetto. I'm country as hell, so they was talking about how I talk, all that kind of stuff. It didn't matter that you were named, Emmy winning. It didn't matter that you were the same person that woke up and gave them the information every single morning. They didn't give a damn about none of that, okay? All they saw was that this girl was wearing this natural hair on TV and it became a problem. Lo and behold, this problem was impacting a whole lot of people. So when you think about social advocacy and when you think about social storytelling, I think it's important to know that anything can become political, as we've already mentioned, right? God forbid our hair became political, right? Black natural hair. So when you talk about identity, workplace equity, cultural pride, belonging, and legislative change, all of that ended up playing into what happened on TV that morning with me wearing my natural hair. And so at the bottom, one of the things that I want to talk about again is hair was never meant to be political, but became that. And I started talking about it a lot on social media. At the time, my station, allowed me to do, because they knew I was gonna act the fool anyway on social media, no matter what. But I ended up responding on TV to all these people that had stuff to say about my hair. That ended up going crazy, and we did a lot of social storytelling surrounding that. And people started to get more involved with the social storytelling as I started sharing my perspective. Led to the Rooted series. That became my first Emmy from TV in storytelling. Thank you. But it was about an issue that I cared about, that a lot of other folks cared about, that was not supposed to be political initially. And even after that, and a lot of the social storytelling that we did around the Crown Act, we ended up testifying as a journalist. That is just something you don't do. You don't go and testify on behalf of nobody's bill, okay? That just ain't how it works, all right? And so I ended up going to testify and all that kind of stuff as it relates to the Crown Act. But what I was gonna say is when it comes to brand safety, I was still able to partner with many Fortune 500 companies even after this type of advocacy in a world that, again, nowadays it might be frowned upon to do some of these things. And so I just wanted to show you, hold on. Oh, is that not my next slide? Okay, I'll get to it. But I'll show you some of the social impact work that came from that after we get to the next slide. Show all this and how it links up.
Yes. We already make link arguments. When we tell a story, we already talk about the internal link of what it involves in terms of the policy-making process. We already talk about the impacts that it has. The question becomes, how did you frame it? You know, as a former debate coach, we always teach our students about how framework is how you frame what you're talking about, and how you frame what you're talking about usually enforces how people understand it. For me, I think politics is simply defined as who gets what, when, where, and how. Simple. Who gets what, when, where, and how. When we think about politics that way, it shows that everything is inherently political. It usually comes down who has the power to dictate what matters. In being able to understand the internal link, I'm sorry, using that language. Being able to understand the relationship, because you don't want to keep on repeating the same thing. You want to make sure, understanding the relationship between a workout habit and how workout habit, leads to confidence and discipline, and how confidence and discipline leads to improving the quality of work. This is the relationship or the causal chain reaction that I think that we need to have in a story. I'm playing. I'm sorry, y'all. I forgot about to say. That's what I was saying. In terms of making arguments, man, all of us claim to be good arguments. A lot of us say that we like to debate, and a lot of us claim to be good debaters. I think that how we tell stories always impact how we are able to cultivate meaning. And, I'm just labbling, but every content creator is already making link arguments, and I hope that giving you language on how to contextualize a point to get from point A to point B helps us better be able to, tell stories.
That's your educator background. You're going to give it to the people, and he's trying to break it down so that everybody can make it accessible for everybody and get the information. So the education background is shining through, I will say. I want to talk about this real quick, especially as it relates to talking about any kind of content that can become not only social advocacy type content, but also political content. The goal isn't to be reckless, it's to be rooted in what you are referring to and what you're talking about. You don't need political content to create social impact. We've already discussed that a little bit, but you do need conviction, which is obviously the topic of this workshop. And conviction, to your point and what you mentioned earlier, is making sure, one, that you know what you're talking about, right? And that you're backing it up with some factual information. And if brand safety asks, will this make people uncomfortable? I think you should ask yourself that before posting dang near anything you post. Like, will this make people uncomfortable? And honestly, if the answer is yes, post that shit, okay? If the answer is yes, that's when we posting it. Will it make them uncomfortable? Is it gonna make you wanna talk about it, all right? The goal is to be social on social media, and I think a lot of folks forget that part of it. Like, if you just posting just to post, okay, hell, I don't know, your shoes, your shirt, whatever. If you just posting that kind of stuff, hey, man, what are you really doing? The goal is to be social, and I think a lot of folks, again, forget that. Rooted storytelling will ask a few questions. Is this true, necessary, and responsibly told? Protect the brand, tell the truth, and serve the audience. And I think that's how you build legacy with any kind of content that you're creating.
Yes, building the ecosystem is what I hope that we are being intentional about how we're able to build relationships and build coalitions amongst people throughout the terrain of social media. Right now, a lot of us are in silos, and we're very isolated, and we're very, kind of independent to a fault sometimes. I think that in order for us to build some political power, in order for us to really cultivate some stories, it's us leaning on how your expertise of being a journalist, my expertise of being an educator, how it can push us forward, move us forward. Right now, I think that in our society, in this midterm election, in leftists versus liberals, in Palestine, and all this information, there is a lot of people I feel like get left behind because they are not as invested in what is going on here, and I think it's not their fault. I think that us in this room, we have a gift of being able to tell a story, and sometimes we alienate people, and I'm talking to myself especially, alienate people based off of how we present the information. So I'm hoping in terms of storytelling, it's able to make it real where you don't have to feel like you have to have a dissertation or you have to have a grad student understanding of international relations in order for you to join into the politics. I think a lot of people become intimidated and feel like, well, I don't have this degree or I didn't do this, so I don't want to talk about this. The conviction in it, to me, is just like, hey, money talk, BS walk. Do you have a real lived experience that can fit within inside of this? And do you think this real lived experience has an impact on how people are situated? I think it does. And I mean, and to me, we think it does. I think that's how we're able to move the pen forward. But the last thing I say on this slide right here is the right has figured out how to activate people that are not necessarily capital P political or, you know what I'm saying, capital A activists. Yeah. We have to figure out how to call in a lot of other individuals that's on our side, you know, for us to cultivate a relationship to make it where you do beauty, you do hairstyle, you do lifestyle, you do weightlifting. How can we make it where your audience, from your standpoint, from your genuine, make it where they understand and care about what's going on?
Because to your point about the right, the way they have co-opted wellness, if y'all pay attention, because people be like, oh, that was my favorite, hell, I don't know, weightlifter, right? And then they go and say something, you be like, I can't believe so-and-so said that. Well, hell, you wasn't paying attention close enough. Because the right has been very intentional about how they've co-opted these spaces. And I think it's up to us to pay attention and make sure that we're using our good and our intellect to make sure that we're building coalitions above anything, right? And I think a lot of times, too, we're not collaborating as much as we probably could collaborate when it comes to the content that we're making in all of our spaces, which is why I love meetups like this, because we all get to have these types of conversations in person. We get so much collaborative content when we are in these spaces, but hell, when we go back home, you ain't meeting up with the creators that's right down the street, right? I got people that was living in my same neighborhood that I met, you know, here. I'm like, now, hold on now. Now, I know damn well we ain't at the same conference, but we down the street at home and not making content. So I think it's important for us to collaborate and make sure that we're creating content together as we are, again, trying to build that coalition and understanding of each other's messages.
Definitely. In borrowing from my adult learning background, I think it's important to give language. Giving language, I think sometimes we approach the content through a pedagogical lens. Pedagogy means how you teach children, little kids, and our audience is adults. So the word I think about is andragogy. It's the study of how you teach adults. And a lot of times we're not working from a non-experiential, you know what I'm saying, type of relationship. I'm teaching kids, I know they don't have any recollection of what I'm telling them, and the example I'm giving them is what they're gonna have to kind of contextualize what we're talking about. Adults is gonna filter everything you're talking about through their own past traumas, through their past experiences, through their past, you know what I'm saying, everything. When I'm telling stories to my adult audience, I'm thinking about how when I tell this story, if you've experienced this type of trauma or you've experienced this type of hurt, how would this story register with you? I understand I'm dealing with somebody that already got scars and emotions and experiences. So my story should also account for the shit you already been through. And I think that if you're not able to do it, usually the messaging, you know what I'm saying, kind of seeps through. So I think that relevance, experience, reflection, application, these are 4 tenets I feel like can keep your story grounded or keep your content grounded when we're dealing with adults. The last thing I'll say is we always make jokes about the reading level of our country. As somebody that used to be a 9th and 10th grade English teacher, most of my students in my classroom had learning disabilities. I was teaching at an alternative school, so that was in my classroom. That meant the other teachers didn't want them to bring down the grades at a school or a classroom, so that was in my class. I was always reminded of this reading level and thinking about, hey, if you are struggling to read and you're in 9th grade, the person that's raising you is probably also struggling to read. If I care about how you position in the community and I care about you as a human before a student, I should be mindful of the lack you coming into this and really teach with some care and teach with some understanding that you are already coming in from a certain perspective. That was on my heart. I wanted to share that with you.
One thing that I will say too, and I love that you shared that, thank you. One thing that I will say too is a lot of times when we're creating this content, we're at home in our little silos, wherever you creating your content at, all that kind of stuff. Get out and talk to people. We don't talk to people enough about these issues. You mentioned how you're training and teaching and educating people about what is happening, but hell, if you go and talk to them, right, and actually talk to them face to face, and I'm not saying we have to do this every single day, but make it a point, at least for some of your content, to get out and actually talk to people and get those quote unquote characters that you're talking about in your story and actually get their perspective on the ground. And I think that really will move the needle in a lot of the work that we're doing, because we talk a lot at people, myself included, but when you're out there actually talking with them and hearing their stories, it's a whole different ball game when it comes to the content. As far as the posts, right, one of the things that we wanted to talk about here is actually taking action, right? Getting people to take action with their content and the ecosystem that we mentioned. And I think we talked about this just a little bit earlier. Making people feel seen, help people understand what is at stake. We talked about how it applies to their lives, and challenging the harmful narratives and connecting personal stories to public issues. Again, from a journalism standpoint, anytime we had a story that we needed to tell, we always had to make sure that we had a character. If you ain't got no character, you ain't talking about nothing, all right? So have a character in the story and making sure that we're able to move the story forward. Tell the story your audience needs, not just the one the algorithm rewards. Anybody in here posted
Easier
content?
said than done. Easier
Hello?
said than done.
Anybody in here posted content and deleted it if it didn't do well?
I'm finna post me
Y'all
a
ain't gonna
flop
raise
right
so
now.
ain't
probably.
nobody ever posted nothing and deleted it. Okay, we got at least one. I done did it before. And I was like, now hold on. I thought that maybe I posted early in the morning. Maybe that'll make it do better, okay? So again, the algorithm gonna do what the algorithm does. And we've seen, especially with TikTok and some of them other places, what they're doing with content these days and how certain content is being suppressed. I mean, I posted something one time at my normal time of posting, that thing may have gotten 2 views. I was like, now hold on, TikTok. You overtly doing what we thought you were doing. So just keep that in mind when it comes to information that people need to know and people need to understand. I already know you're trying to go there, but what people need to understand about the content or whatever it is that you're sharing, post it because it's content that you were convicted to post, right? Not just what the algorithm gonna push and, push forward. Go ahead.
And to add to the conviction, I think it's a difference between purpose and popularity. And sometimes on social media, we should do things and prioritize it for the purpose and understand that based off the purpose itself, it's not gonna be popular. I have to always kind of internally be like, hey, bro, what you just said right there, it has value and it has purpose. It's not gonna be popular. You should be okay with that and move on. And I think sometimes us as creators, we put so much time, effort, and energy into making a thing, and then you post it, and then you don't get the dopamine release or the engagement you thought it would get, and then you start to go back and negotiate the purpose and the popularity of what you're doing. And for me, how I stay grounded in this is like, I got some positions that has purpose that are very unpopular. And as a result, sometimes people treat me very unpopular. I don't give a damn. I think the purpose outweighs the popularity, and I think that's how I understand conviction. You know what I mean? I know that there are some videos I post that might get 10,000 views, and some videos I might post that get 2 million views. It's some videos I might post that might get 800 views. I try to train myself to just keep the purpose in the story and just move on. And these days though, the algorithm might give you a little late gift. You know what I'm saying? A little late push. You went to sleep, it was flopping. You woke up and the video was pushing. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta be patient with it. But I think for me, you know what I mean? And I know we're gonna bring this in and y'all gonna ask some questions. Just like, what is the purpose? What is the purpose? What is the purpose? And always kind of prioritizing purpose over popularity.
Questions. Anybody got questions? I would love to answer questions. That's what I really wanted to do throughout this entire session, was actually answer questions, because we know that you guys are gonna get this PowerPoint. Many of you have already been creating content. But hell, I want to hear some questions from the audience, because I think it's really important to apply whatever it is that we're talking about with all these slides, and y'all done sat through, I should say, many sessions. We want to hear the questions. I think we got one in the front.
Yes. Good morning. Or it's still morning, whatever. Tashar, this is specifically for you. How you talked about journalistic integrity earlier. Like, are there any ideas or strategies, best practices that you would share with this group about how to maintain that journalistic integrity, digging into the meat of the matter, the new, all of those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think it's important to slow down. And I know, again, even from a TV background, right? When it was breaking news, your network, your station always wanted to be the first folks to get that information out there. But those days, in my opinion, are over. You want to get the information out there, but you want the information to be correct, especially since we're living in a day and age of disinformation and misinformation. You put something out there that's incorrect, your credibility is gone. It's shot. All that credibility you've built over however many years, that's gone, especially if you don't quickly go ahead and get it fixed. So one thing I will say is making sure, I mentioned this a bit earlier, that the information is accurate, right? That you can confirm and verify this information with multiple sources. And now that you see the Ellis and them folks, buying up all this media, you got to make sure that you're getting your information from adequate sources, right? And there are many networks. I can give you some of that information. I know we'll share some of that after this session. But making sure you're getting the information from a source that's reliable, number one. But two, several verified sources. People will see something on one page and be like, oh, I'm about to run with that. You can't do that in this day and age. You don't even know where them people got the information from. And everybody is getting information that's passed down from this person to this person to this person. For example, if I'm not in the courtroom, I ain't just taking what somebody said about the Carmelo Anthony case at face value. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to verify that with multiple sources, number one. Then I'm going to make my take on it, right? And it's all going to be factually accurate information that I'm going to pass along to my audience. So I always say, make sure your information is accurate, right? And make sure it's accessible in a point where people can understand it. I was always taught, and this is the last note, and I'll pass it to you, but anytime, and I know you said talk like you're talking to adults, but in journalism, you have to do a story as if you're talking to a 5-year-old. You truly have to do a story as if you're talking to a 5-year-old. And the reason being is not just with attention spans or all of that, but you got people who are, whether they're working moms, dads, whoever, we might be on our phones and got the TV on or whatever the case may be. So whatever I'm telling you in 60 seconds that came from 8 hours of information, I got to make sure you can get that in 60 seconds, right? And that information is something you can walk away with, but you have a full understanding of what I just told you. So getting that information out at a five-year-old level when it comes to content. Yeah. Thank you for your question.
Oh, I have a question. So with everything that's going on, I think we get things back to back to back that this administration is doing. And George, you talked about how we want people to feel what we're saying. How do you kind of gather yourself? So, because as Black folks, we're being hit with a lot of these things that the administration is doing. How do you gather yourself to give that information, one, to make them feel, but not overly feel like it's an attack? And what are you doing to make sure that like she said, the information is correct, but it's also digestible so they can get it and not just feel your emotions, but also get that factual information?
I usually start off my content off of how do I feel about it, but then the more important question, what's the impact? And I think that's how I try to contextualize and filter all my videos. It's like, what is the purpose of this? Because as a former debater, my debate coach will always be like, yeah, you right, but like, what's the point? And then after, like, what's the point? What is the impact to the point? And that's how I kind of think about all my videos. It's like, this thing is important. Here is the impact to this thing. Here's why this impact is important. And that's how I'm able to filter my emotions and feelings and me talking and popping it while I'm popping it and making it where it's going somewhere. I have made videos where I think I was too emotional, or I felt like I was I was giving too much opinions and too much hot takes and not enough substantiated information. So what I figured out now is having that balance of, after you take what you pissed off and mad about, what is the purpose? What is the purpose? What is the impact? And then, like, for me, it'd be like, I won this debate because this. You're wrong. Not only are you wrong, the impact of you being wrong leads to this. The impact of you being wrong matters because of this. That's how I think about making the content. And the second thing I'll say is I've learned that just because I think it's important don't mean it's necessary. Like in debate, we teach debaters, like, hey, in the last rebuttal, you got 6 minutes to answer this argument. You can't answer everything. You need to have discernment on what's the important arguments to respond to and what are the necessary arguments to respond to. You answering the important stuff, it's not necessary all the time. You know what I'm saying? Or it's like, that's important, but it ain't necessary right now. I think that's how I think about the content. Sometimes I get lost. Like, man, right now, in essence, there's been 50 things that's happened, I'm sure. I ain't made a video in 3 days. Does this bother me? Yes, it does. But I also know that I don't need to talk about every damn thing, but I also know I haven't set with this to be grounded enough to think what is the angle of why you think it's important. I don't need to get out and try to hurry up and get it out there. At first, I feel like it's easy to be like, let me get this out. Let me get this
Yeah, we were
out.
talking
let me get
about
this
that
out.
earlier, yeah.
Let me tell you, as being somebody that used to feel that way, I have gotten shit wrong. Or it wasn't, I was somebody put it like this, I was being truthful, but I wasn't being honest. Because I jumped to get the information out so quick. So just an understanding, discernment, what's important, what's not important, and then I know my ministry. I have to just learn this too. I'm good at talking about certain things, and other things I shouldn't be talking about.
Hey, I'm a community movement organizer and a political strategist, but my question is, how do we take our people from awareness to offline action in this digital age of social media? How do we get them to mobilize? How do we get them from getting that information from you all to actually taking that information and doing something with it?
Well, first, since I know who you are, I think you are already doing that, especially from a community building standpoint, right? I think, and you can weigh in on this too, but I think building those intimate communities, I think one of the things that we've learned is we can have, this to me is an intimate gathering, right? One of the things that I've learned is I can throw major events all the time. I used to do it through my organization, Loud Women Lead. But when I have a group of 20 people, or 30, or 40, or 50, right? That's when we can actually move people to action. So whatever conversations, I think that's how IRL events, in real life events, started to become so much more popular, because after the pandemic, when we were all stuck in the house, folks wanted to get out and commune and be around each other. And so I think whatever conversations, your end game with anything that you're building, when you think about it, should be, okay, well, let me start from the end, right? Which is everybody getting together and work backwards, right? So whatever that end game is, and work backwards from that. With how do I bring all these people together? How do I mobilize them? How do I get them to take action? What organizations can I partner with? You know something about that too. What organizations can I partner with to mobilize and get all of us in the same room, on the same page when it comes to advocacy? I think about, again, when we were trying to mobilize for the Crown Act to get more people involved in Texas, we were literally figuring out ways like who gonna carpool, when we gonna drive from Dallas, how many of y'all driving from Houston, who driving from San Antonio, and that all started on social media. It started on social media and literally getting folks together, Mariah, you included, and trying to figure out how we can go down to Austin and testify on behalf of the Crown Act. So I think one of the ways, again, is coalition building, number one, but also making sure that the work that you're doing online, you're taking that offline with your end game being, let's get together and, take action by way of community building and the work that we're doing together.
And I think that we should view social media as a vehicle that's going to get us to a destination instead of social media being the destination that get us what we want. I think sometimes we put the cart before the horse, so we forget, hey, this tool is supposed to be taking us to the destination where we get the visibility, we get the education, we get the awareness. The social media is not the destination that gets us the awareness, that gets us the tools. To me, the question is you're asking is about, call to action. And I think call to action, to me, it has to do a lot with framing. And a lot of us right now, not us in this room, but a lot of people believe that social media is the destination that would get them to where they want to be at. Instead of seeing social media as being the tool or the vehicle to drive us to the destination. And I think that goes very well with what Tashar just said. And I think it's just some sequencing, distinguishments. Because sometimes you can have a whole bunch of visibility in the destination and it don't mean nothing. It has no impact. It has no material consequence does it bring in terms of what's going down. I think that's what I want to talk about.
A vehicle, absolutely. Any other? Oh.
So everything you talked about, true, real, and we all are tired, right? Like this work is hard. I'm tired right now, right? So my question to you both would be, what do you do outside of social media to take care of yourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, knowing that Black people experience trauma from doing this kind of work on a daily basis, and knowing that there are MAGA supporters and whoever in your comments telling you things that I'm not going to say out loud. But how do you all take care of yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally when this gets hard?
I love this question. I do have some wellness content that I post every now and again. It actually does really well on social, and I don't know why people just love my wellness content over my other stuff. Like, I need y'all to like that too. But anyway, so for me, I have a therapist, so aside from that, and I go there bi-weekly. Outside of that, my mornings are for me. I don't like early morning meetings. I'm not trying to check no email, none of that carrying on, okay? I don't need no hooting and hollering early in the morning for me. And so my mornings are my sanctuary. So whether I'm reading a little something in the morning, I done probably read 3 or 4 newspapers, but also I'm reading my scriptures. Like, I'm doing all of that as part of my morning routine. I go and work out most mornings. I'm doing yoga, all those different things, right? And so for me, that's how I stay grounded. One of the things that I've also started doing is because I've had a lot of loss in the last 5 years or so, and I've really, and especially being in TV news for so long, getting days off was a thing that, unheard of, all right? Like holidays and all that kind of stuff was like, yo, I'm missing all this life because I can't get off work, all right? So now that I'm an entrepreneur and I'm able to do content, full time in the work that I've been doing, I've made it a point to take more trips, to reach out to family. I call somebody every day, and I don't know work type, nothing. Like, I'm calling a friend, a family member, I'm checking in with somebody. Even if they don't answer, I'm old school, I'm leaving a voicemail, okay? And I'm hitting them up via text, hey girl, I called you. I'm always doing that. Every single day, I make it a point to call or check in on somebody. I can just scroll through my contact list, somebody. And so that has really fed my soul in a way that for many years, I don't think I was being fed. And it has just allowed me to, put myself, not necessarily on a back burner from a standpoint of taking care of myself, because I'm doing that, but just putting other people first in my life, but also making it just a little bit more consistent. And again, like, working out has just been, baby, whether I'm going through heartbreak, pain, whatever it is, like, working out gonna get me there. So that's what I'm doing to take care of myself. And also tuning out social media. We gotta remember, like, social media is social media. I have people on my show sometimes, and they'll get in the comments, and they're starting to respond to everybody. I'm texting them, I'm like, Commissioner, baby, get out them comments. Them people gonna stay there. So get out them comments and let them people do what they want. As a matter of fact, I want y'all to argue with yourselves, because that's gonna increase engagement for me, because I ain't about to shut y'all down. Do what y'all gotta do. So that's what I'm doing to take care of myself.
Hey man, I unplug, and when I unplug, I do it like unapologetically. That means the phone don't exist to me right here. I'm at the house, my wife and my kids in this house. No, I'm not gonna look at this phone for the rest of the day. That means no text messages, no doom scrolling. I don't care about the dropping news. I am leaving that consciously guy, that whole persona, that's on the internet. Today, I'm dealing with George. I only care about what George got on. Matter of fact, I've accepted that most folks on the internet don't give a damn about George. They care about that consciously.
They really
you know
don't.
what I'm
Y'all
saying?
gotta remember, they don't care.
They don't care. You see what I'm saying? So I've learned to check my own temperature, to see how I'm feeling, what's going on, and if I need to unplug and spend some time with George, or if consciously can create some content. And the older I get, the more I do therapy, the more I understand that George need a lot of love and self-love and self-care from me first. So I unplug, bro. I'm talking about, like, even right now, I probably made 3 videos in 4-5 days. I used to beat myself up like, damn, it's my job, this, that, and the other. I'm chilling, man. I'm good. And people will be there when I get to. If they not, I'll figure something else out. You know what I'm saying? But definitely unplug and make distinctions. They don't care about George. They care about consciously, what is George thinking about today? And that's how I do it, man. But definitely unplug.
That is good. Any other questions?
Hey,
Well-
can you tell can you tell your people to bring the food a little earlier? Maybe. I'm just throwing it out there. You feel me? Just
You have a question? Oh.
And you can either answer it or George can answer it. So you were talking earlier about not talking at people, right? And trying to touch grass to try to get people motivated and activated when it comes to the political spaces. How are we leading with empathy, especially with people who don't have the privilege like us, who can be plugged in all the time? Talking about politics is a privilege for a lot of us, because a lot of us don't have a 9 to 5. A lot of us don't have children or responsibilities to where we're focused on making sure we're on the grind to pay for our bills, our medication, all of those things. So how do we lead with that to get these people motivated?
First of all, I think that's an excellent question. So thank you for posing that. And a very real question, thank you. One of the ways, I think it goes back to, so let me back up. One, I know my background and where I've come from. And I never forget those people. And I never forget where I was raised. And I think a lot of that filters into my content. And I love what George mentioned earlier about people believing that they have these parasocial relationships, that's another story. But people believing that they know us intimately from a standpoint of, they call me cousin, right? And it's because when I present the information, I'm not just talking at them with the information. I'm truly, and I hate the term boots on the ground, phrase boots on the ground, but I'm truly in the community. I am truly showing up at events. I am truly trying to have these conversations with people that are actually being impacted by it. So when I do my TV show, my digital show, throughout the week, I'm bringing on people that have actually been impacted by it. I'll give you a prime example. We had a situation where this woman, it was all to do with voting, and basically she ended up voting, going to jail for some time, and other folks was like, well, dang, I thought, this wasn't an issue, right, or a concern. And by having her on the show, someone that people had heard about, but they didn't fully understand her story, having an actual, again, I hate to keep saying character, but having an actual character person on the show that could actually talk through some of those things and not me just talking about what happened to her, but allowing her to share her story. And I think, again, understanding where I come from, understanding my background, regardless of where I am now, I think that I have always stayed true to that. And I think that's what kind of reels people in with the type of content and the empathy that I have before I'm talking about anything as it relates to, it can be any topic, whatever it is. I think that's how I lead with empathy from that standpoint, yeah.
Same as well. I moved back home to Texas about 4 or 5 years ago, and it keeps me so grounded of being able to be at the Essence Fest and being around people I grew up around and people I looked up to and this, that, and the other. I'm finna go back home and be in the country. And when I go be in the country, I made that video that I thought I was waxing poetically on. My cousin or my homeboy gonna ask me about it. To me, it keep me so grounded and making it where I'm leading with empathy and sympathy, because I can be a pompous asshole sometimes. It could be like, I said this, that, and the other. As a matter of fact, talking to people that's grounded, I'm finna go talk to you now. I got to see the actual human connection of what I said and how it was interpreted, and it take me off my little academic high horse. So for me, it make it where it's always just like, what is the human thing on it? And then more importantly, I always think like, if I took this to my hometown and my hood, would this video resonate? If it won't resonate, then I think that I should do it better.
I was gonna ask too, if you know who, not necessarily who your audience is, because they're gonna come when they come, right? But one of the things that was told to me a really long time ago was like, talk like you were talking to your auntie. Like, will my auntie care about this story that I'm sharing right now? And also, would it resonate? Would it take her feelings into account? Would it make sense to her? So to your point, if you were to take that back home, would those individuals understand that story? Now, let me be very clear, because some family can be traumatizing. So some of them stories might not resonate with them. But if you have a trusted individual around you, right? You know what I mean? And for me, one of those individuals is my auntie, my grandmother. Like, would they understand this story? Would they care about this story? Would it make sense to them? And also, again, from an empathy standpoint, am I leading that way in a way that it will resonate? Yeah. Any other questions? No? Well, I do want to say thank you to Ms. Cara so much. And thank you to CBC PAC and Rolling Sea Action Fund for having me and George. This has been an incredible conversation. As Cara mentioned earlier, there's a lot going on with Essence Weekend. So the fact that y'all made, a few minutes to come and have this conversation, truly appreciate it, because I know time is valuable. So thank y'all so much.